on behalf of FIDS, welcome everybody on the virtual conference to hear from Khanderao Khand on the topic of India-China conflict and its historical context. Just want to give a little background about FIDS. FIDS stands for Foundation for India and Indian Diaspora Studies. It's a think tank forum for policy analysis and awareness for India and Indian diaspora related socio-political issues, policy matters, and world affairs. FIDS has centers in Washington, D.C., New York, Silicon Valley, and Atlanta. Now, today's speaker, we all pretty much know Khanderao Khandji. He's one of the directors of FIDS and also the founder. He's a policy analyst on international issues and policy matters related to India, specifically on Afghan-Pakistan region, Indo-China and Indo-US relations. On Indo-China issue, he has hosted conferences, events, talks, and written in various media. He was a convener of India-China conference in 2012 in Washington, D.C. on occasion of 50th year of Indo-Chinese War, 1962. He has published articles on Indo-China standoff at Doklam and South China Sea published in Far Observer and India Abroad. So with that, welcome everybody and welcome Khanderaoji. Over to you.
Hello everybody. On occasion of, rather on the background of ongoing standoff between India and China. So we have this event. So last almost 2 months, there has been ongoing activities on India-China Ladakh region. And it started with the news coming up in the month of early May that Chinese incursions had been reported and some activities ongoing in the region. And then, of course, there was some Indian responses immediately, and that it was much more localized news coming up. And then almost last 2 months, it has been going on. It also resulted bloody conflict on the June 15th, where 20 Indian soldiers died and about 43 Chinese soldiers died. And the standoff is still going on. Hence, we thought that we can have this talk. Essentially, what we see is that a lot of people, including Indo-American, then also second generation, who has not seen the first war between India and China, have not studied the history, lack the context. So it's important to just go through that, understand that what is going on, what is the context behind that, why it is happening now, and what could be the next one. So today, a lot of things to cover in a very short time. I'll be covering 2020 conflicts. It's happening in the Galvan River, Ponga Lake, Hot Spring, Despang. Then there is why these locations are important. There is some historical background behind that. We can go through that, and then some of the in between few conflicts that we can go. Infrastructure built up on both the sides, and followed by the some discussions. So this is a map of India. So India has 7 neighboring countries and also Sri Lanka. Major disputes are with China, and on the west side with Pakistan. So we'll be talking mostly related to India-China. India's border is based on what British defined in 1947 when India became independent. So this is the map of India is as defined in 1947 when India got independent from British. India has neighboring countries from Pakistan. As per the map, it also had some border with Afghanistan, but since Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and also after the Aksai Chin got invaded by China. We don't have that touch. But then we used to have Tibet as a neighbor, but now it is a China, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, and Bangladesh. And we have Sri Lanka in the south side. So the most of the conflict, as I said, they are on the west side with the Pakistan, and then with China on the northeast side of it. So it'll be, when we look at the China, so China has direct neighbors, and almost all the neighbors China has conflicts. So they go from whether it is North Russia, Mongolia, Taiwan, then Laos, Philippines, of course, India, Myanmar, almost all of them. And the major dispute for China is in the South China Sea region, which is another topic of discussions, that China is building artificial islands and military base around that area, and it is a major contentions is ongoing. There was an international tribunal which has ruled against China, but China didn't accept that verdict. And because of that, Vietnam, Philippines, and many other countries which are in the vicinity of that South China has this ongoing issues going on. And that's one of the more flashpoint, which is of the international attention, including ongoing activities or ongoing presence of U.S. Navy in the region, and also recent Australian naval attention to that area. So it is a ongoing area. But if you can see that the basis of the Chinese claims, that they have been much more historical claims, like say Laos, some area was ruled by Yuan dynasty 2071 to 1368. So on the slide it shows that some historical claims are there. But at the same time, if you really look at it, the Mongolia case very interesting. Yuan dynasty 1271 to 1368. But interestingly, China was actually ruled to a certain period by Mongols. Now, whether we can extend the same logic, who owns based on the dynasty, that can be a questionable thing. But you may have heard that Genghis Khan, but his I think grandson Kublai Khan had ruled China, and that's a very interesting history that you can read about it. So India and China, we always hear that India never had war with China before 1962, and then a friendship, and there is a influence. Yes, India did carry a significant influence in terms of the cultural influence, and not only on the China, in terms of Buddhism and also other cultural aspect, but also to the far east of that region itself. There is a one important aspect that we need to understand, that there was never war between India and China, that there was a Tibet in between, and most importantly, Himalayan region. So whenever we say that a Chinese tourist used to come, or the travelers came and visited India, and then noted few things, but they actually came from the Khyber Pass. Most of them, I think, except one, almost all of them had to go all the way to the north, and then towards the east, and then come via current Afghanistan, which is the Khyber, and enter inside the India. So that way, no way that invasion could have come, or conflict directly between China and um, India. So that rule got changed in 1950. So we need to understand history of Tibet to understand what had happened. So Tibet was the neighbor of India. So Tibet, the nickname is the roof of the world. If you look at it, that even the Chinese references, it called as a Tubo in, I think, the 7th century. And Tibet has a very long history, starting from second century or even 500 BC, and there were ongoing kings and empires till the time. And then when the Buddhist influence started, it was Buddhist and Mongolian, both the uh, religions and both the cultures presented were present in Tibet. So Tibet has the region like say empire up to say 7th century, and then the fragmentation area started from 9th century to 12th century. So Tibetan empire, it actually started fragmented, but then again around 12th century there was a unified Tibet when after the Genghis Khan and his dynasty, particularly Kublai Khan, that time the Mongol conquered Tibet and actually put a administrator. So they did not rule directly, but there was a administrator, and that administrator was actually, you can think that guru or teacher of Kublai Khan, and that's how he got the influence. So the relationship between the Tibetan dynasty and Mongolian was much more like a, one is the power influence and another is the teacher or the influence from the guide point of view. So Tibet again got independent on 14th century and then continues up to 18th century. And then King dynasty invaded and then controlled de facto administrative rule up to 1912. So 1912, then Tibet again got independent. And that time it was the Dalai Lama started. So if you look at the Dalai Lama's 1913 statement, Dalai Lama is like a much more avatars you can consider. So we are small, religious, but independent nation. That's what it was declared. But 1950, when People's Liberation Party, when the Chinese Cultural Revolution happened in 1949, they defined what the China's vision is. And then 1950, uh, the China's Liberation Army entered into the Tibet, and that's where the next was that 1959 Tibet upspringing revolt happened, but that time Dalai Lama sneaked into India, and since then Dalai Lama is in India. So that's a cultural history. Why it is important is that when 1950 China invaded Tibet or conquered Tibet, that's the time the geography or the relationship between India and China first time came into the contact. So China became the direct neighbor of India. And this is the slide which shows that Mao's uh, the thinking behind China as a one empire, and Tibet is a palm of China, and it has 5 fingers from Ladakh to Nepal, Bhutan, Arunachal Pradesh. So this is the vision that guides China, that one way or another we should have the control on the palm and the hand. So that's the thought process that behind that the broader Chinese empire, at least when it comes to the Indian region. So now I would like to come to the exact details of what are the border conflicts are there. So Indo-China border disputes, if you look at it, that on the Ladakh side or the north side, there is a Aksai Chin, which is marked as a red. So in 1962 war, which I will be going into details little bit later. During that time, China invaded India, and it took control of the region called Aksai Chin, which is marked as a red. There are some other areas of dispute as marked, but if you look at that the Indo-China borders, there are 3 parts. One is the western sector, which is about 1500 kilometers, which has Ladakh. Then it has the central sector, which is a Himachal Pradesh and Uttaranchal, like say Pithoragarh and those areas. So that border is relatively, or rather the most peaceful. There are certain areas of still conflict, but not the active flashpoints. And then the eastern sector, which on the east side of Bhutan. Actually starts from Sikkim, because west side of Bhutan is a Sikkim. Sikkim used to be a separate independent autonomous nation, but under protege of India. So India used to handle the foreign relations and the used to give the military support. And in 1975, Sikkim had a referendum, and then it became part of India. So that complete border is about 1325. So same type of a coverage India gives to Bhutan, and that's why when the Doklam standoff happened, that's the time India actually entered into that conflict that we can discuss a little bit later. But to a broader level, there are two bigger flashpoints. One is that Aksai Chin, which is actually controlled by China, and then Arunachal Pradesh, which is claimed by China, but it is Indian territory. So let's drill down to the Ladakh region, which is the area of interest, current interest. Okay, so India-China region, if you look at it, there are this map on the left side. The dotted line, it is a border as per 1947, that's India claims. Then these 2 points and this line, these 2 points are the petrol points that China had established in 1959. So that's why this line goes between that. The most important is that in 1951, China started constructing this road, which is shown as a orange color here, which goes here across Aksai Chin, connecting to Lhasa. It is actually connecting to, I think, Xiang province from north west of China to Lhasa. And this blue line is the line which actually line of separation between China and India as per the 7th September 1962. So why this 7th September 1962? The war happened later. The war happened from October 20 to November 20. And then the border got redefined. So the actual line of control is like this. The one, this is a claimed by China. So in this, there are few more important points of the current flashpoint that we need to pay attention to that. One is that Pangong Lake, which is over here. This is one of the major flashpoint currently happening. And then there is a Galwan River. So this is the valley. So these are the two important flashpoints we'll be discussing. But very higher level, we need to look at that what are these lines and what are these backgrounds, borders, etc. The first thing that India's border, that is a Johnson line, which is defined in 1865. Kashmir's king had a fort in Shahidullah, which is almost 80 miles, or rather 80 kilometers above this. So 1893, there is the Chinese official showed that Aksai Chin is a part of India. That time it was the British India. So time to time before the British India, it was first the Sikh empire had ruled, and then Gulab Singh, who is Maharaj of Kashmir, so had that Ladakh as a part of that territory. After 1911, China continued to accept Aksai Chin as a part of India. And then after this 1949 Chinese cultural revolution, when China invaded Tibet in 1950, 1951, China started building the Xinglang Lhasa road. It was a stone mud road. And in 2013, that is just 5 years back, It was actually constructed as a asphalt road. So the second border between India and China is the what it used to be called as a northeast front. In this case, which much more Arunachal Pradesh, and that's the border was outlined by it's known as a McMahon line, and it was in a treaty between India and then it was Tibet, because China was never India's direct neighbor. So between India and Tibet in 1914, Simla Accord got established. So it was a British India and Tibet. And Henry McMahon, who was the foreign secretary of British India, he had negotiated. So that's why his name was given. As per that border, Arunachal Pradesh is a part of India, and it is part of India in governance also. So China's even first premier, Zhou Enlai, in 1959 had accepted McMahon line as a LSE. However, in 1962 war, China invaded this region from various paths. One was through the Tawang, another Welang, and there are multiple entry points. And it came almost 20 to 40 kilometers inside Indian territory. But then China retreated back to the actual current line of control, which is the McMahon line in 1962. That also shows that China at that point agreed that it is the actual McMahon line is the actual border between two. And these are not just some lines. Typically, when the borders are outlined, there are certain geographical consideration also. So these are the Himalayan ridges. So based on that, this border, either they are typically mountain ridges or rivers. So that's how the borders are constructed, except for the populated areas. So most of these Indo-China borders in the Ladakh region and also in the Arunachal Pradesh, they are either very mountain, like a Himalayan ridges, or a very difficult terrain, barren lands. That's the area, at least in the Ladakh region, that we can go through that. So one important development recently that Modi government, when came into the first power in 2015, started preparing a report about the infrastructure development between in the region of the Arunachal Pradesh, particularly in the border region, because in 1962 are one of the most difficult difficulty in Arunachal Pradesh region was there were no roads, or the infrastructure was not there to reach out the army or military with the equipments to the border region. So one of the initiative in 2015 is taken is to construct a road between Tawang and Yashpur, which is almost near to the Myanmar, so which is across parallel to the McMahon line and much more closer to the McMahon line. So that work is started, proposal in 2015. Unfortunately, it is slow. It is did not take that much shape. And 2020, actually, that report got submitted, and the further work is now starting. But early in this year, in 2020 January, one of the most important bridge has been constructed on that route. We can discuss that later. Now let's get to the 1962 war. So 1962 war, I actually covered some of the background before the war itself. That there are certain similarities between India and China. So India got independent in 1947, and China actually formed PRC, Cultural Revolution, 1949. China, as of today, is much more economically strong and developed. But when in 1949, China was not that developed. It was highly populous and larger territory. However, it was to a degree in Second World War. Japan has invaded China completely. So China was in the receiving end up to that. So both of the countries, you can think that they started on the same ground. 1950, China invaded Tibet, and so India protested, but still accepted that China's control over Tibet. And India first Prime Minister Pandit Nehru, he had a philosophy much more socialist and much more in a way you can think that in illusion that he as a Shanti Dut or the peace messiah, and India as a result does not need any army. So he had some vague notions around what the foreign policies are, the military requirement of the nations are considered, etc. 1955, India and China, essentially under the leadership of Nehru, started Panchashil had accord a Panchashil agreement for the peace treaty and started a mantra called Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai. But at the same time, China was actually slowly invading India to a degree that India did not know that Aksai Chin actually was almost lost without bloodshed during that time, because the construction of the road itself was done in the completely Aksai Chin area. If we go through this slide, it shows that there is the orange, the yellowish line, which indicates that the road which goes through the Aksai Chin, and there was no proper knowledge about that, or acknowledgement, at least Indian government had done it. So when the actual war started in October 2020, but from 1959, China has been upset, or China has been doing activities so that it can be taking the border positions against India. One of the important event happened in 1959 is that Tibetan uprising, and that's the time Dalai Lama sneaked out to India. And that could be one of the reasons that the China war happened. That's what one of the reason has been given. But this was a very asymmetric war. First of all, that because of Nehru's doctrine, India was not prepared for war. Most of the equipment that India had was either leftover from the Second World War, and actually the guns were from First World War. So one of the most commonly used rifle that Indian Army had is called .303 bore rifle. That actually was commonly used in First World War, and the Chinese had the MMG, or the medium machine guns, so which was like a semi-automatic. So you can think that it was asymmetric from the equipment. Also, it was asymmetric from the numbers. So there were about 22,000 Indian soldiers as against 80,000 Chinese soldiers participated in this war. India caught complete by surprise. Chinese opened this front on multiple regions in Arunachal Pradesh as well as in Ladakh area on 20th October 1962. There were no clear instruction whether India should engage into the war or not. Communication failure and also the decision-making failure was bad. The military leadership and political leadership was not prepared and was not knowing that what is actually happening. And in this war, India lost 45,000 square kilometers, which is mostly Aksai Chin area. So Aksai Chin area, again, I repeat that it is a completely high altitude area, which is at the about on an average 4,000 meters height. That is a 13,000 feet height, and dry, very cold terrain, not much habitation. There are certain areas in the southern area, there are greener pastures, but otherwise Karakoram and other side of it is completely dry and barren land. So India did not establish any outpost over there. So it was not really manned. There is no, if you, many times we think that borders between countries, there are either the fenced or there are certain demarcation, but it was not over there. And the patrol troops were so thin, and there even the patrolling period might have been so uh, like say months and months apart, so it was very difficult to even understand that what is happening. So on that background, when the attack happened, it was literally caught Indian army in paralysis. So as a result, no, almost 13,000, 1,300 Indian soldiers killed, and more than 1,000 wounded, 1,600 missing. But total number missing plus killed, you can say that it comes around 3,000, and almost 4,000 were captured as a prisoner of war. On Chinese side also there were casualties. The official number is about 722 soldiers, and 1697 were wounded. But China has a history of underplaying the numbers, because some of the wars happened. I can cover a few of them. Actually gives a very different number. So this is the political, the failures why India lost. One is that political leadership. I covered few things that India did not have a defense plan. Like Nehru says that India doesn't need the defense plan. Our policy is non-violence. We foresee no military threat, so we don't need army. So he was in a denial mode. Then this Krishna Menon, who was the minister, he was actually from the communist background. So for him, China was much more as a ideological brother. So never conceived that China can attack. Then there was, he was not ready to actually prepare the military. So General Thimaya had proposed actually to upgrade, but it was refused to cover. So Indian military, as I said, that bore .303 bolt action the rifle. For every bullet, actually, you need to make 3 actions. That's the thing. If you have seen the very old movies from First World War context, you will see that how they used to fire the actual bullets. And it was outnumbered. So also the intelligence failure. So these are the few things. But one important thing that I want to highlight, which is a kind of coincidence, that China always uh, took such kind of attacks on when something else is happening elsewhere. For example, when China invaded Tibet, there was a Korean War was happening, and the attention of the world was on the war. Similarly, when China invaded India, there was the same period this Cuban missile crisis were happening. All of us Americans should be aware about the Cuban crisis. It happened from 13 October 1962. Actually, my date is here incorrect. Continued up to 28th of October 1962, and then China had invaded on 20th of October. So that's the, you can think that that's why there was a delayed responses also from the international community. And when the international community started engaging, particularly US, then China unilaterally announced the ceasefire. And as a part of the ceasefire, China went back to LAC in north eastern Nefa area, but continued to control Exai area. So some of the example of the valor of 1962 is Jaswant Singh Rawat. This is in the Garhwal region. So if you, this story is about his post in the Nuranang fall area was attacked, and 3 soldiers, he took the cover from another, because there was a machine gun very close to his position. So the 3 of them went over there, captured the machine gun. He only could come back. And then he almost in that battle of overnight killed 300, as per that report, 300 Chinese, and Indian 3 Indians were dead in that. He continued to actually, he is the unique case that he continued to be recognized as he was awarded posthumously, but he was, even though he was dead, he was given a continuous promotion as if like he was, he is live. And there is a that Jaswant Garh, which is a war memorial, And the right side, that beautiful fall, you can see that I think it appeared in one of the movie, that Hindi movie showed that fall. But it's a beautiful terrain, the Arunachal Pradesh. It's a mountain area, but it's a green. As against Ladakh area, it is also mountain area, but it is completely barren. There is another war story from 1962, which is from the Ladakh area. So in this case, Shaitan Singh, who was a major, and his area, which is the Rezangla, which is a very near to Chushul, which is the south of Pangong Lake, which currently the flashpoint is. Over there, almost 2,000 Chinese had attacked, and he had inadequate weapons and all this adverse difficulty, but he motivated his soldiers just by over the night going from post to post. And it says that out of 120 Indian soldiers in that night, 114 were killed. And as per the report in the Rewari Memorial, it says that 1,300 Chinese were killed. Now, we don't know, because the official number of the Chinese of the entire war is not even 1,300. But I think you can see that the number could be somewhere in between. But definitely, this was another war. He received a Paramvir Chakra. And these are the few stories, and only one attack happened during that where we did the counter attack. It was in the Nefa area in the Velang, where actually we showed India showed the Indian counter attack can be very devastating for China. So after that few years, it was much more quiet. Very important to understand one thing, that 1962 war had a huge impact on Indian psychology. So India had got that the whole defeatist, and is still that fear is there in some of the corridors. Probably it could be some establishment, or the common people, or the media, but there are some defeatist thing that it's still, whenever there is a flashpoint between India and China happens, we feel that, hey, whether we are in the receiving end and whether we can stand up to India. But some of the examples like Nathula Pass, 1967, even Doklam, has shown that it is not. And then recent report also, we see that India how is standing against China itself. In Nathula Pass in 1967, so it's a similar thing. On the August 5th, this Chinese started constructing their bunkers. Indian commanding officer objected to that, went over there. But in this case, Indian commanding officer, when he went for the negotiation or the talk, he was attacked and he was killed. It's very similar to what recently happened in Galwan River area. The similar thing, that Indian commanding officer went and was killed. And when that happened, Indian the army, or actually the whatever the military in that region, does not take very lightly. So there was this war between battle at Nathula, and that the fight ended. 88 Indian died, and 163 were injured. But you can see that Chinese number is 340 died and 540 injured. Of course, in this particular region, Nathula, India had a little bit advantage of the height over there. So I think the 10 years back, Nathula Pass got opened. So this is one of the paths which actually used to go to Manas Sarovar and Kailas region, so which is much more faster, because it goes to China in a Khumbu Valley, and then the roads are very faster. So almost within a day, you can go to the Manas Sarovar region. Other path is through Nepal, which takes almost 7 days, because you have to then by foot and by other ways cross the the Himalayan ridge to enter to other side and go to Manas Sarovar. So this is one of the path which is used to go to the Manas Sarovar and Kailas region. Now 2017, and in between the lot of these treaties, visit of Rajiv Gandhi, and then Chinese premium, and then all the treaties, etc. I will skip that. Essentially, we established certain rules of engagement. One of the rules is that we will not attack each other. No bullets will be fired, and that's the reason that we can see that during current conflict also there were much more bulletless conflict. Even in the Doklam region in 2017, when China actually started again the constructing, the same like Nathula Pass, they started constructing the roads, etc., with the bulldozers, and then India actually stand up. This region is is a in the area where it is Bhutan's territory, but it is very important. One is that Bhutan has objected. To Bhutan, we provide the military support and foreign policy support, so that way Bhutan does not engage directly to China or any other country. So India does on behalf of Bhutan. In this case, it was very important because Doklam Panel, the plateau, also would have given a strategic advantage to China to attack the Siliguri passage. The Siliguri passage is the one that in the Chicken Neck area, which actually joins India, main land of India, with the north east states. It goes, it's a very small passage, so that could have got attacked, and that could be a problem if anything happens in Arunachal Pradesh or that region. So it was very important to hold up. So India stood up to that. It was a 72 days of face off, and then Chinese actually backed out into that area. And after that, again, 2019, that is even last year. So there are always on the border side, some issues happen. So now I'm going to the last concluding section, not in the concluding section, but the main topic of our discussion, that what's happening now. So I'm again visiting the same map of Indo-China Ladakh region. By now, you might be familiar with all these, some names and some of the border demarcations. So just to recap again, so now again, according to 1962 war, now this is the actual line of control, which goes through the Pangong Lake here. You can also see that some areas from Hot Spring, which is currently under the another flashpoint, Galwan Valley. Then there was some report that Despang Plains, where Chinese has established some camp. They already have a camp, and there is a camp on India side also, very next to. So they are mostly watching each other's activities. Then there are radars from China also, and recently in that region in 2013, India actually reactivated DBO airstrip, and which can land C-190, which is a Hercules airplane, which can carry military equipment as well as military personnel deployment. And then that goes to Karakoram. So right now, what I would like to mention is that we constructed a road which connects Darbak to almost it can go to the north side. It goes to Dibio, that is the Daulat Beg Oldie, and that goes parallel to this Shok River, which you see in the left side. So this is the Shok River. So that's and this road directly can connect to Karakoram. So that is one of the worry that China has, that India can put a pressure or can take a military action around that area using this DBO road. So this DBO road is on a plains, so very high altitude, but they are capable of landing the fighter planes. So that's very important to note that. Now, hybrid map of this 2020 flashpoint, if you look at it, this is the Aksai Chin area. This is a India claimed border. This is a border that China claims. And 3 points that we need to see: Pangong, Hot Spring, and Galvan. Rather, 2 points we'll discuss more in details. So this is the Google map. Just I took today morning. So this is if you can go to Google satellite view, you can look at this Galvan Valley River. So this is the Shok River. And if you see here, this is the Dibio Road that I'm talking about, which is very important. It just goes to the banks of this river. And this is a Galvan River. It takes a L shape here, turn. And this line is actually Indo-China line of control, actual line of control. So this is the Google map draws that. And if you really pay attention to this particular area, that's where you can see that the whole current flashpoint and all the details will go through that part of it. To understand that again, this is at around 4,300 meters, around say 13,000, 14,000 feet. If you have done heights, you know that you need to be acclimatized to go to that region. Otherwise, there will be water in your brain and your chest and all these things. You will have the health issues. So you need to, you want to reach to that altitude, you need to be preparing. It's a low oxygen, dry, very cold, barren region. The Galvan River itself is very cold, and the mountain is treacherous. The river to certain points is a shallow, and certain points is a very rocky and goes deep. If you fall into this water, chances are very high that you can die either by getting hurt by the stones or by the cold water itself. And then the distance between this flashpoint and this Dibio road is almost like a 4 kilometers, 1.5 miles. So it's very important, because if Chinese can get into this side, and if they can get into, they can effectively put a pressure on the Dibio. It can come into the firing range of the Chinese position. So currently, if they follow this is a almost 1,000-meter height of a mountain over here. So they don't get any advantage unless they get into this other side of it. So they need to probably even 600 meters they can come further. They would have some strategic advantage. So that's why they are much more coming further. So China, though this is a border, China did not have any people posted here for they used to come to patrol, but it is not effectively manned border. So in the month of May, they started building when the ice melts. That's the time the action happens, and that's the time when Indian patrols noticed that the Chinese started the building the presence. So the most of these activities were on this side, which is on the Chinese territory. They constructed the roads, they constructed mud bridges. They had actually the bulldozers and all these equipments to reach out to that area. So from this point, about 9 kilometers away from this point on Chinese side, China has its own base camp, which was also not that much manned and developed. So they recently built up the infrastructure over there, and then constructed the roads. At some point of time, early May, they had actually blocked the water. So water actually flows from here to this direction. And so they had blocked the water. Probably it could be temporary, or we don't know. There are some people say that India might have busted the bridge and the dam, but most likely it was to reduce the water so that they can do some construction and construct the road both side of the river itself. That could be one possible. Another could be that theory. Someone said that it could have been established and India busted it. But we can see that in the month of May, early May, satellite images shows that less water, but in recent, it shows again full water. So this is you can see that there is some, this is again the satellite image, which shows that there are some constructions. There are even the construction equipment over here. There are vehicles, and this is on the Chinese side. And when it started, India actually started the building the similar thing. So India is not like a was not aware. I don't think that it was the case that India was not aware about that. So India built it, started building. Only thing that you can see the pace of development in May to June, so 2 months, the China developed this very rapidly. They established the mud road on both sides, and built the trenches and tents and camouflage them. And actually in this area they did not camouflage, rather you can see further that their tents are in the pink color, and probably they wanted to just get noticed and make sure that everybody knows that Chinese presence is over there. So it's typically, otherwise they would have kept somehow camouflage or at least in the color of the terrain. So after noticing this, there were some tussles, and then there was on the June 6th, there was a military level discussion, and it was agreed that both will do the disengaged, and the Chinese troops scaled back. But as Ashley Tellis, American expert, has called out that that's the, even though they goes back, that construction what they do, they will always keep it there, and it will be handy. In this case, actually, pullback was just a it's a stage show. It was a just to show that they are going back, but they again within a few days came back when Indian Petrol again mid next week noticed that China started the building the tent, etc. That's the time on June 4th, our Indian platoon went there and had some fight. The next day, the senior officer, that is the commanding officer from India's side, uh, this Santosh Babu, he with a platoon, he went over there to basically again to take out all this construction and re-establish the boundaries over there. But they were attacked brutally in a way that Chinese seems to be, they were prepared for the attack. There is this club with the nails, you can see. There are also reports that Chinese engaged some martial artists. They were recruited and deployed in this area. There were also some swords like weapons. India had this bonnets and I think other weapons. So these are the fierce fight on 15th. It started in the evening. It continued till the midnight. And this is again the very treacherous area. It is as if like you go to some kind of a hike, hardly 1 meter. Sometimes if you're lucky, there is a 2 meter, but 3 feet to 4 feet, that could be the pathways over there. And fall of say 100 to 200 feet going directly to a cold river. So a lot of Indian soldiers actually died by falling into the river. On China side also, there was a fall of there was a mudslide, and that mudslide killed a lot of Chinese. Chinese, of course, they are not acknowledging the actual number, but that's the reports from many sources coming. It seems that the actual the India side, there is a mistake here that there are 50, not 500, and then about 200 soldiers from China side actually fought in that particular night. So that was the most bloodiest fight since 1967. 1967 is the one that Nathula Pass battle happened, and this is the second one. Since then, there are different level of discussions, etc. So I will not go much deeper into that. So what are the details and who does that? But you may have seen that recently, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Leh, met the soldiers, and also declared that this expansionist strategies or the policies won't work, they will be failed. So that was a direct message to China. It will also moral booster to the India soldiers, but most importantly, it shows that India is actually prepared. So a lot of people had this question that how much India is prepared into this fight. So this is the construction. It shows that on the right side is May 22nd and left side is June 22nd. So there is still This tents are out there, left side you can see. But this I have shown this the line of control. China now wants to consider this river, whatever the mark could be the line of control. But this portion actually in the Indian territory. So Indian army did enter into here and then did the destruction, and that's where that the whole fight had happened. So there seems to be some de-escalations after that, but most importantly, you can also see here there is this line that shows that the wall that Indian forces constructed. So they are mostly the defensive wall over here. I was talking about the water. So there used to be a bridge here between these two, one larger bridge, one small bridge. They are not there. Either got destroyed or got under the water. We don't know. So this is the China side. So a lot of reports on our side only talked about the China side preparedness, but this is from the China social media. On the left side top, you can see that the India side built up, which is the cul-de-sac, then supplies and Indian road network built over there. And then there is a camp, which is a very strategically location because that campsite does not come into the attack from the place where China is actually built up the tents and probably might have put some military equipment. It doesn't come over there. So this is the camp you can see over there. In 72 hours after the flashpoint, that is after the 15th of June, India constructed this road, the bridge, which is a 60 meter bridge, which is around little bit left of this area. So that is on this particular river. So that provides us, it is for both personnel as well as some military vehicles. It can go on that. So it was a very rapidly constructed. This also puts a top view on the mountain top. So India has a strategic advantage on the top. So on this side, only India side tracks are over there. And this is the image from the Chinese commercial satellite. It shows that how India has built up, and this probably could be about this region, how India has built up its camps on this side. So what is China gaining out of this one, right? So it's essentially China is established a presence which was not there. They used to patrol, but this part was not, they did not have a post. India had in fact a post over here. So China on line of LAC. So the LAC, as Google Maps showed, is much more in this side, which is the actual, the right side is also Indian territory, because that is the territory India lost in 1962, but India claimed much more beyond that. But China is now trying to push into this area, which is shown as the red dotted line in this region. So which can be across the river on the other side of the DBO. So that's what the whole Chinese plan is, that if they can cut this or have the presence over here, so that they can put a DBO under fire, and then they can protect their Karakoram Pass and probably cut off our access to the Aksai Chin North area. So very summary on the Galwan River. So both sides now built tents and walls and trenches and LSCs. So both sides are match up. So India and China are both match up on the both side. India side camps are there along the river 5 kilometers, and then China has the 9 kilometer. India has some advantage because there is a DBO which is much more closer, and then FP15 which is also very closer to this one. India also built another road, which is a big road on the Score River itself. I will show the map to that. Now I want to, before going to that, I also need to let you all know that I don't think that this is going to withdraw immediately. It is not something that we should be glued to the television or the news and every day look at it, that what is happening front of that. We need to see that India is prepared. China is actually prepared. China got surprised to see that India is well prepared in that area. So we are in a way that turning Chinese playbook on themselves. So long story short is that that presence may continue, and it can only be resolved by some political discussions or diplomatic negotiations at the higher level, and not at the ground level at the military level, though the discussions will continue. Now the next flashpoint is a Pangong Lake, which is one of the most beautiful lakes in India. If you go to Ladakh, it's a must watch. Most of the tourist sites advocate to that, and it's a blue water lake, probably like Lake Tao or something, which is near to us. This is another aspect is that it's no micro vegetables, etc. No fish. Because of that, there are no much life inside that water itself. Some of you may know this scooter, etc. from a movie. So there are shooting just like Nurangan. There is also over here. Again, resetting back to understand the geographic location of this Pangong Lake. So Pangong Lake is here in this south. We looked at the Galwan River this side. This is the way, and this is the Google map. You can see that, go to satellite view, and you can look at this Galwan Lake also. And you can see here, this is the mountain, and there are certain ridges are there. They are called as the fingers, which is a what the mountain expands into the water itself. So I wanted to now go through these details, though, because those who are interested in the little bit further details on that, they always hear that finger 5, finger 4, finger 8, etc. So this is the mountain, and that mountain has this ridges entering inside the water. So each one of them, starting from here, they are named. So this is a finger 1, this is finger 2, this is finger 3, this is finger 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. You can see here, and this is again, this is the Google map I actually expanded and printed today. So you can see there is this line which is going from this ridge, finger 4 over here. So that is the line of actual control as per this. However, the claims are different. Now, entire area, of course, as per India, it is a part of the Aksai chain. So it is part of the India, but lost territory. From the actual line of control point of view, China has been having base at finger 8, and India has a base at near to finger 4. It is between 3 and 4. If you expand this area, you can see a dot from the satellite view. Now, this side is India side is very deep water, treacherous mountain, very slope. On right side, you can see that there is a beach-like area here on this. So this is the area where China built up the road, which is a almost 8 kilometers road, and they have constructed fortified this area, particularly between 5 and 6. This area you can see there are some images we can show. This road construction has been there. Even last year there were reports between that. So for example, many of you may have seen this video getting circulated, and but most of the times video gets circulated but without the timestamp on it. But if you see the Shyut Arur's tweet, it is in 2017. So August 2017, this tussle had happened, and that was between the 4 and 5. There is that beach-like area. So mostly it happened around that. Indian claim is that up to 8, there is always, there are 2 types of petrol by foot, and then petrol by boats. So boats definitely happen. Foot also used to happen, but in last, I think, couple of years, probably there might have been a lot of tussles there, because China's presence and camps and fortification is increasing there. Rather, it is a much more higher. My image got, I think, one on this. Another image shows that there were Chinese Humvee type vehicles, and they were pushed back by the Indian military. So that is the region over there. And the right side, what it shows is that this is the finger 4, which is at the border. And this is the, if you expand the area, which shows that the nice slope marine kind of things. So that's the area where you can see both construction and some mud road over there. So access in India side is very treacherous, so you won't see the road, but this is the area that India has the post. So what we are seeing now from the reports is that there is a Chinese, they have established a presence higher up in the mountains, and that is giving some strategic advantage to China. And that could be one of the purpose that China has done in this case. So Pangong Lake summary is that China built moat-like structure between 4 and 5, essentially fortified. Typically the construction over there at the FP point is that much more just a tents or some not solid structure, but they have established a fortified structure in that area, which is alarming. Then they have that almost 8 kilometers mud road between FP8 and 4. China built up camps, tracks at the higher mountain, and India also expanded the presence over there. So India matching the investment, the people investment and the infrastructure in that area. Only thing that very less thing that you can, or we can hear from the India side. So that's one thing I missed to tell. It was there in the slide. This lake is pretty big. It is actually from this, it goes to all the way to Tibet. It is 135 kilometers long. So it's pretty much almost 80 miles long, and its maximum width is 5 kilometers. So almost like say 2 miles you can think of it. So that way China can enter into this region without, means by boats also. So that's so they can do the rapid development, etc. Why that point is important, if you can again look into the map, it's this one, right? It gives them they probably wants to go further north and expand it so that they go to Darbak. So north of Pangong is a Darbak, which is not shown in the, that's where that Shore River starts. If you look at that Shore River is there, and that Score River, the Score River is the where the Dibio Road is there. So somewhere here, I think at the left south side, you can see there is a Leh, and that Leh get connected to Karakoram by the Dibio Road. And again, the same path for all these Chinese flash points. What we are seeing is that it is a much more coming further. So this is the camps various aligned they have done up to the Galwan River is to create a pressure on the DBO or bring the DBO in their firing range. That is could be one thing. Second thing, that advancing their claim on the line of actual control, so that they keep on doing that. So that's why that they never sit on the define the demarcation and agree on that. And even though there are agreement, you cannot be sure that that agreement can be honored by the future leaders of it. So that's the sad part of it, you can see. So this is a last slide. I will just put that some thoughts and we can open for the discussion. So there are various thought process or the questions that people have been asking. What could be the reason and why now, right? And why so much aggressive this time? And is it business as usual? Because though we do not hear much, there are always some flash points and fights happen on the border between the patrolling troops. You may have seen lot of videos in the past that they use abusive language, hurl stones and all sort of things. So is it just that and just went something haywire that someone just killed something and then it just triggered, or there is something much more serious is there? There are a few things that China definitely seems to be strategically try to keep it at the local level, saying that it is a local thing, and also at the higher level claim that China army, China people have been peaceful, they have not been aggressive, this is our area only. That's the same repetition you can hear all the time. So everything as if like it is in their territory. India army, whether army or the local patrols are aggressive unnecessarily, they should be controlled. So that type of a language is that there is a, particularly this case, um, the flashpoint, unlike Doklam, which was in one particular area, Nathula Pass, again the same thing, it was at one particular area. In Nathula Pass case, there was another one after a few days in a north, some 10-20 miles, but mostly it was very localized. But in this case, you can see that the multiple 4 at least places, and there is also another report that Despang plain, which is north near to the Karakoram, south of Karakoram, alongside of Dibio. So there is also some presence over there. So, so is it a business as usual? So it said that it is more serious than business as usual, because you may see that India has increased the military presence over there to match the presence on the China side. India is actually deploying, whether they are tanks or whether it is a fighter planes. India is actually focusing on that. Prime Minister Modi's visit assuring more action and presence, and also giving free hand to the military. So are the multiple things you can look at it, that India is not taking it lightly, though prudently India's leadership has avoided direct taking China's name or the direct allegations, not to have that escalation, to keep the door open, so probably they can have that negotiation there. The possible reasons, there are multiple. Initially, people are saying that whether it is China wants to deflect from COVID-19. I put it as a low priority. Second thing, because there are multiple things can be deflecting from COVID-19, including the Hong Kong recent thing. And then there is a continuous activity in South China Sea. Then another reason has been given is that there is some internal power struggle in China, and China's President Xi Jinping is under pressure to prove that he is delivering onto the vision of China, or he needs some decisive action so that he can have some win. So that also, because China's, that this news keeps on coming all the time, and most commonly when there are some flashpoints between India and China, so they probably, more than internal distraction, they could be the distraction to the Indian mindset, but doesn't seem to be the internal issue. One of the thing also can be contributing is that August 5th operation of Article 370 happened, reorganizing Ladakh region as a separate union territory. And that also defines, again, Aksai Chin as a part of India. Subsequently, of course, China, it didn't go well with China, and China objected. Subsequently, our external minister visited, and there are some discussions, and probably it didn't escalate immediately, at least to the surface level. However, in that, as I showed into that video, in 2019 video, there has been increased activity by Chinese military on the border in that area. China got actually surprised in this case, is that the playbook that India is using, particularly under leadership of this government, is that massive infrastructure development is happening alongside of the border. The Dibio road is there. There are the bridges getting constructed all along in Arunachal Pradesh as well as over here. There are military purchases are happening, upgrade of the equipment, whether it's a airplanes, or there is a very high velocity activities are happening in that area, which is a surprising from, if you look at that, India takes longer time for the military purchases, at least in the past. So that was one thing. In 2019, I mentioned that Daulat Beg Oldi Highway got completed, which actually connects Darbak or Leh to Karakoram Pass. So that's a very strategically important highway, and it can land fighter jets. But we also need to see that India is not doing just alone. China is doing the same thing, rather more infrastructure uh, getting built on the China side. China is building a lot of military bases, the road reaching to the borders, etc. So India is matching that, so that, but that still it's not going that well with China. But it should be expected that India as a nation need to do that, and will do that. So that it would be a new normal in this situation, that it will, India particularly currently, at least in next 5 years, will make sure that we can see a huge infrastructure built up in Ladakh region and also in Arunachal Pradesh area into that. So for a broader picture, China is going to fixate India in some border dispute. So that's people one thing process is that it might be India is rising and China needs to put India under pressure. So that could be one thing that just lock India down to some specific local border disputes, or that. There are also some thought process that China is not happy that India is actually working with US. But if you really look at it, that from 1980s onwards, or rather Nixon onwards, China and US has been friend, right? So for India was a non-aligned nation for a longer time and much more closer to Russia, but India didn't have that problem to be China getting closer to US, etc. So international politics, that alignment happened. But by this particular case, it says that China would be pushing India closer to United States itself. So it's a counter argument towards that. So in all the generally these are all different theories, different people put together. None of the governments can concretely agree or give the rationale over there. In conclusion, I would say that it is a standoff. It is not a something that going to happen and get de-escalate very quickly, unless there is a political intervention at very higher level and there is some discussions and agreement over there, and that would happen because the current Chinese position, particularly in Galwan River, it non-tenable. It means that when winter comes, it is no chance that they will be able to put their troops over there. So they will have to withdraw, and then next summer will be the new summer. So we don't know. So in a way that I would say that China has some tactical gains in this case, at least Pangong Lake area. However, India has matched up in terms of the number, in terms of the actual the presence, in terms of the military, and also in terms of paying attention to the issue. And that is something that China is probably seeing its first time. Lot of people may expect that Modi ji, this government may take Uri-like action, but China, Pakistan, two different things are there. Having surgical strikes, etc., are very different purposes are there. They cannot be the same thing, but at the same time, we can look at the track record of this government and the preparedness. It will not be taking it lightly. So I do not think that it is a situation like 1962, but definitely it is something that India can avoid, then should avoid, because India should focus on the economic development, particularly when coronavirus menace is still growing and pandemic is still happening in India. So India is still not back from that. And also India's economy is still recovering from earlier setbacks. So in that context, India needed to focus on the economic development, but it got distracted from that. But decisive actions are going to happen. There are some positive things may come up. For example, in the case of for example, this banning 59 applications, very small thing, economic or any sense is not, but you can see that lot of innovation happens from the Indian startup. but the big innovations are important, not in this application, etc. They're important from some other aspect, but 5G networks, infrastructure development, pharmaceutical manufacturing. Over last 1 decade, India has been increasingly more dependent on China, and this could be some eye opener. And hopefully, strategists would take a note of it and plan next decade accordingly. Thank you.